All right, we will call our October 21st meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Are there any disclosures of interest? Hearing none, previous board meeting minutes from October 7th.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We approve the October 7th county board meeting minutes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Consent agenda, we have 5 items.
I'll move.
Approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Department reports, access variance request, County Road 42. We talked about this at the last meeting and asked to bring it back to this meeting. Actually moved to reconsider it, and that's why it's back here.
Chair, just one point too is we haven't approved the agenda yet, so we should probably do that.
I missed that. I'm
There are no
sorry.
changes.
We'll back up and approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Sorry about that. All right, on to you, Jess. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. As the Chair mentioned, we are back to discuss the reconsideration of an access variance along County Road 42 in Zumbrota Township for a Mr. Josh Betcher. Goody County Board of Commissioners at the last meeting requested to hear additional testimony from Mr. Betcher concerning a variance for driveway access to his property. A little background: on June 24th, Mr. Betcher applied for an access permit. The permit's attached to the report. The parcel number 470120100 has one existing access. The owner requested a second access. That original permit was denied due to spacing requirements that are outlined in the county's access management and control ordinance. Upon denial, Mr. Betcher applied for a variance. On September 2nd, 2025, the board scheduled a public hearing in accordance with the provisions of the ordinance, which outlines the process to apply for variances. The public hearing was held on September 16th. On a 4-1 vote, the board granted the variance, thereby approving the issuance of a permit. In communicating with Mr. Betcher, staff advised him that no work should commence in the right-of-way until an approved permit was issued. The permitting process would have instructed Mr. Betcher on proper construction specs for the access, particularly with regard to the county right-of-way. Permit had not been issued when it was noticed that Mr. Betcher had completed construction of the access. The board met on October 7th, at which time staff provided the board with information related to Mr. Betcher's construction of the driveway without a permit and information related to potential business use of the property that was not included in the application. That memo has been attached as well. A formal motion was made to reconsider the variance with a request from the board to have Mr. Betcher speak to them at today's meeting. That motion carried and the issue is now before the board for consideration. Mr. Betcher has been advised of this action and that he will be allowed to address the board today. Staff met with Mr. Betcher on October 14th concerning the driveway that had been installed and issues that would need to be addressed if the access is allowed to remain. The conversation revolved around discrepancies with culvert size and type, the need for the driveway to slope away from the road and to be a half-foot lower than the shoulder at 20 feet from the shoulder of County Road 42, and that the surfacing type would need to be a Class 5 aggregate. The driveway width was acceptable, as well as the slopes that were constructed. Beyond that, it would be a little bit of turf establishment to get things to be all tied down. Mr. Betcher and the contractor that built the driveway asked about potential ditch cleaning adjacent to the driveway and whether that would be acceptable. It was explained that during a process like this where someone's building a driveway, ditch cleaning is routinely acceptable to ensure positive drainage, and that Goodhue County routinely allows that through our permitting processes. So in the process of reconsideration, the Goodhue County Access Management and Control Ordinance specifies when a variance may be granted. The language from that document follows, and there's 6 items that are listed directly from our access policy. All 6 listed circumstances, according to the ordinance, need to exist for a variance to be granted. The board should consider reviewing those, as it would be prudent during this reconsideration process. So with that, that's the background and where we're at. Something that can be considered here is continuing discussion with Mr. Betcher, reviewing the matter fully, and then determining whether to rescind the initial motion, approving the variance request or not. If the motion is rescinded, in the recommendations, you can follow that process. So with that, I'll stand for any questions from the board, or the board could consider asking Mr. Betcher to come up.
Any questions for Jess? Go ahead.
So one point that you had in here, you said you kind of left out the fact that you told Mr. Betcher you weren't going to issue him a permit till the minutes were approved.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if that's standard practice, or we're all aware of that, is that anything we vote on here isn't official until we approve the minutes. But if we take a step back, these aren't really questions, these are comments, and I'm going to go, reasonable person, I'm not sure what the impression was, but a reasonable person would come and ask for a driveway permit if the impression that you guys were given was that he's trying to hide something by functioning a business, because that's kind of what you led people to believe, is that he's trying to do something different than what we authorized with the memos and stuff that you wrote up. I'm not sure how a reasonable person would do that. Okay, the other thing we have to look at is taking this back from the get-go. Other than a functioning business, which you doesn't necessarily need to have a permit for because it's ag-related, any reasonable person can look
No,
at the...
that's not accurate.
It's debatable,
No, it's not debatable.
okay?
Let's just take a step back. Lodemeyer Implement had to get a conditional use to operate totally an ag business at their location. So yes, ag businesses, any business needs a conditional use.
So everybody selling seed out there has a conditional use permit?
They
No.
should.
Everybody doing custom chopping, farming,
No,
winter hauling?
that's different.
Okay, but anyways, reasonable person could look at the right or wrong. So the process that it went through, taking 2 months to get brought to this process, nothing really has changed in what Mr. Betcher is still ag-related, it's still access. So you guys were all here last meeting when we approved a permit conditional use for Ryan's, for their manure storage. Did we look at the access that they had to County Road 9?
I don't think they look to change anything.
They had 3 access points on a paved highway. They didn't look to change anything. But I'm just saying a reasonable person could look at this and say, everybody else has this, it's reasonable access, I would like an additional driveway on my property. It's not unusual. And if you look at that specifically, I don't want to say assume, but have any of you looked at access points along county roads as you've been out driving since we've had this discussion?
Yes.
It's not unreasonable what he was asking for. Any which way. He started the process out in 2 months, was denied. 2 months and everything going through a typical process, and even when he came to that meeting with the understanding that you need to come and ask for variance. Was he on the agenda? No. Was he intended to get talked about? No. Was he here with the impression that he was going to be? Yes. Did I have to bring it up to Mr. Bezak to bring it up to ask for the variance request? Yes. Okay? We went through, we heard all this information. There's nothing unusual about what he's trying to do, whether it's being a business, should get the conditional use or not. Okay, we heard all that information. Makes sense. You can get an additional driveway to access, so you better utilize your property. Through that process, I'm guessing you all had the same impression from Public Works. They don't support it, don't want it, don't want to see it. I have longer story, don't know why, it's nothing unusual. So you get the variance approved, good. Went through the process, the board heard me, they accepted. When you call and contact Public Works that day, and they tell you, no, you're not going to get it until the minutes were approved. Meanwhile, you spent the last 2 months without any, from a customer service standpoint, failure. You spent the last 2 minutes, and now you just felt you just got jerked around again. Probably not the right way to go about it, but that's what happened. So we put the driveway in. What's wrong with the driveway? Few issues, but nothing that we're going to discuss here, anything of the use has changed, unacceptable, unreasonable. The ordinance in itself needs to be rewritten, looked at, tailored differently or set up differently. It's not a one-size-fits-all, which, whatever it is. But nothing we have utilized or looking at today is unreasonable that a reasonable person wouldn't have went about and done to get additional access. We approved the variance already with all the information we had. Nothing really has changed. There's not necessarily a functioning business, not necessarily more traffic or anything that's going to affect any use on the road. The question mark is why. I'm not sure if that was Jess's intention, may or may not have been, to think that Mr. Betcher's trying to hide or get away with something that he shouldn't have been, to bring forth and put all the effort into bringing forth this memo about what has transpired. So the variance should be stayed, should be reapproved if we have to reapprove it, put the driveway in, make it up to standards, and life goes on. It's nothing unreasonable, nothing unacceptable that everybody else in the county wouldn't expect and the way to be treated and dealt with. So.
Go ahead, Susan.
I have one question for you, Mr. O'Keefe. Jason implied that when we approve something, it's not actually approved until the minutes are approved. And is that correct or is that incorrect? Or is it depends?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it. I was going to speak up too on that particular point. That is technically incorrect. I think once the board approves something in the meeting here and votes on it and approves it, it is an official action of the board and it can be acted upon. I think the practice of some of the departments in the county is to wait until the board minutes are approved before they move forward on it. And in this particular case, the board action didn't allow the property owner to go and put the driveway in. He still needed the permit from Highway Department. I think that was the issue that was in this particular case.
Right, but the Highway Department wasn't required to wait for the board minutes. I mean,
Correct.
it might be their policy, but it's not a legal requirement.
Correct.
Okay.
Not the policy.
Yeah, and I just have one other question, and this is really more for land use. To me, the real question is with the proposed business, which I understand appears to have an agricultural use, I don't know if that's quite the correct term. I think the question that I would have as a board member is, well, what kind of impact is that going to have on how many cars are coming and going from the property? Or what type of vehicles even, I guess.
Good morning. So the way that the county zoning ordinance is written is that if you have a home and you, on that home site in an agricultural district, if you're operating a business out of that home site, that can fall into either a tier 1, a tier 2, or a tier 3 home-based business. In this case, I've spoken with the Betchers, and they really fall kind of right in between the tier 1 or tier 2 and tier 3 businesses. And what we're looking at specifically is the size of the operation. And the way that the county defines size of operation is based on how much square footage in your building are you dedicating to the use, and how many employees do you have? So number of employees is defined by people that are coming into the site that don't already live there. So that's additional traffic. You know, in this case, a tier 3 can allow up to 10 employees. So we immediately are looking at 10 vehicles per day coming, you know, to work on site, to leave on site. And then we're looking at the planning commission would look at the use itself. So deliveries, is there manufacturing, is there odor, is there smoke, is there additional neighborhood impact? So yeah, traffic would be a consideration for a tier 3 home-based business. Typically tier 2, lower impact. Usually there's not a big traffic change for tier 2.
Any other questions? We have more. Is there more questions for staff?
So 10 employees, but you don't have an idea of how much traffic they would expect would be coming and going?
I think that would all come out during the,
Too soon?
once they do actually application. We don't have an application, I don't think you have an application as of this point about what that business looks like and what the traffic volumes could look like.
So last week, there was a conditional use permit application for a Tier 3 home-based business submitted to Goodhue County. That'll be considered at the November 17th Planning Advisory Commission meeting. There's some information in that application about the type of business, the number of anticipated employees, and some information about just how the business would operate, the number of trucks and deliveries that are coming in and out of the site.
I guess my statement to it is, like I said last month, I mean, I maybe still will approve this, I don't know. I just didn't have all the facts and all the information ahead of time. I look at, if we don't follow our permitting process and things are going to change in our county, somebody can go put a hog barn up tomorrow, and none of the neighbors are going to want that, you know? So we do have to follow
Process.
the process.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I, you know, and I appreciate looking into it again, and I'm not sure on that, whether the minutes need to be approved, whether, you know, whether it's becomes action when our board chair goes and signs that variance that same day, or if it happens the next day, or what.
I haven't signed a variance yet.
But,
I think the point that I guess I steer the board back to is we do have an ordinance, charged with following the ordinance. We don't like the ordinance, we should change the ordinance, but we haven't done any of those things. We need to follow our ordinance, and our ordinance said the spacing wasn't enough. Afforded Mr. Betcher the opportunity to come for a variance. And then we still need to follow our ordinance, and there are 6 items, and they're still sitting in front of you. And the last one, economics is not a reason for approval or denial. Economics is not entered into this. So I just want to point us back to following our ordinance as our oath says we should, whether it be the zoning ordinance, whether it's access ordinance, or whether it's any other ordinance we have. We need to follow the process and follow that method. Go ahead, Sue.
So I think that the board approved the variance based on concerns about safety. I mean, you can agree, disagree with whether or not that was right.
I think we did, but that doesn't answer all 6 of these.
No, let me finish. And so I think the thing that's really changed is learning that there's going to be a business or proposed business on that property, and that the number of cars and vehicles coming and going could definitely impact the safety questions one way or another, and we don't really have that information. Right? And so to me, what would make sense is to have Mr. Betcher go through the conditional use permit process and have the driveway be looked at again as part of that process, and for us to make a decision at that time, which would also include the driveway. So then it would still be, I don't know what the right term is, postponed or whatever, until the decision was made about the business and the impact of the vehicles then. And I, for one, would like to hear from Mr. Betcher.
Right, go ahead. Let's just state your name and your address just for the record.
Josh Betcher, 23830 County 42 Boulevard, Mazeppa, Minnesota. So starting out with the conditional use process, so we reviewed it with our legal team, and it's not necessary, we feel, that we would have to have a conditional use permit under the agricultural operations clause within the zoning. That being said, we're working with the team with Megan and zoning, and we're willing to review that process with them. And the tier 2 would be because we currently have 2 employees, but the tier 3 designation is based on square footage. So just the nature of what we're doing takes up elbow room. So we're willing to go to that tier 3 classification, and it's been a great process to work with, and I'm fine doing that. I've got no issues building the driveway to code. That's a non-issue. This business opportunity didn't start until after I started my driveway process. If we'd have had a reasonable timeline on getting the driveway process reviewed and completed, I didn't get let go from Bayer until August 1st. That's significantly after we had put in the application for the driveway. The business opportunity came up after I lost that job. So we started this business after that. So it wasn't part of this driveway. So it wasn't meant to, oh, let's hurry up and get this driveway in. This was meant for agricultural purposes to start with. That being said, we do have a business now that we're starting up. We want to get going. We'll meet all requirements for the conditional use. You know, really, to me, we lost our patience with the county. You know, if you look at the zoning ordinance, you've got 60 days to get stuff processed. We're almost on 4 months now. If we'd have waited till now, and then another 2 weeks after this meeting to get the minutes approved, and then a couple more weeks for processing time within the department, the ground's gonna be frozen, we still don't have a driveway. It was really a push to get it done before harvest, so that it was accessible and usable for harvest.
Questions? I guess I just have a couple. I think we identified that there were other ways to meet the ordinance with your driveway, and you haven't accepted those, but we could meet the minimum 550 by moving your other driveway farther west, which would then meet the ordinance. You wouldn't have to have a variance.
It's still 2 driveways then.
I get it, but they meet the ordinance.
Does it meet it within my property boundary
Yeah.
limits?
Does, yeah, it will.
But then you've got the bridge access.
Pardon?
So there's a bridge on the
If
neighboring
you moved your driveway to your house to the west, you could get them 550 feet apart, because you have enough space on that where it joins the road. So you can meet the ordinance. There's not a question about that. Jess could go out there and show you exactly where you'd put it, and you'd meet it. So what I think Sue hit on, what really bothered me is we didn't get the whole story the first time. And we heard it was all agricultural, and it's not agricultural. And I understand what you're telling us, but there's other factors that show that it wasn't quite that black and white.
But to me, it fits within agricultural operations, and I reviewed that with my legal team after this whole pissing match that we've had with the engineering department. You know, it's really starting to get personal. So I don't know if the staff is intentionally, you know, looking Facebook up on company, you know, corporate time for the county, or if they're doing it on personal time. That to me felt like a personal attack. If I need to do a business conditional use permit, I'm fine doing that process.
Yeah.
But why don't you ask me about that? I had never been contacted directly by Jess until October, after the last meeting, when your team here mandated that he talk to me in person or email me. Prior to that, I had never got anything except for redirected to the sub-staff, you know, so working with the director from Public Works and working with the assistant engineer. And I've done what I felt was reasonable to comply with the standards, to try to meet the ordinance. Against all the recommendations of my friends, neighbors, everybody said, put the damn thing in. Don't go get a permit. You're wasting your time. Deal with the shit after. It's gonna be easier than trying to get a permit.
And we understand that. We
But
deal with
this-
that, we deal with that all the time. And that means, what that really means is the 48,000 other people in the county end up paying staff time for a driveway that someone puts in without a permit. And our costs for issuing permits, whether it's in land use or whether it's in public works, is based on, we calculate about how much time it takes to do that permit, and that's where we think that charge for that permit should be. because it covers the cost for you as a taxpayer, for me as a taxpayer, to get the benefit that benefits me, and I pay for that, and Sue doesn't have to pay for it, John doesn't have to pay for it. It is paid for by the person who gets the benefit. When you don't do that, and we have to backtrack, it costs everybody in the county money. We have a process how we determine costs for permits, and it's based on how much time it takes to process it.
It's not about the cost of the permit. It's about the fact of how inefficient the process is. It takes forever. You can't get anything done in a reasonable amount of time. And then to be dismissed by the staff, oh, I've been informed, I can't come out to your property as the meeting minutes haven't been formally approved, and blah, blah, blah. If you got any questions, talk to Jess. You know, so that was very dismissive from Public Works staff, calling me on a blocked phone number to make sure that I don't get their cell phone number to try to call them back. You know, so it got to the point where I was done. You know, if this doesn't end up going through, we'll see you in court. Because there's so many other places, you know, just like what Mr. Majeers brought up, that there are these driveways. You can't tell me they all weren't put in prior to 2006, and you can't tell me that every single one of them had a permit. I tried to go through your process. I tried to follow this and get this done the right way, and I lost my patience, and I'm done.
I understand that. I totally understand that.
So
But we have to follow an ordinance. We have to follow the ordinance,
we will
so
build it to code per the variance that this board approved, and it'll meet specs, and we should move on. Stop spending.
that's a
the
board,
taxpayers' money.
that's a board decision. We have to make that
That's-
decision.
That's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board?
Well, to me, that we would like anybody to be successful with their agricultural business. It's good for that individual, it's good for the county, it's good for the county taxpayer. So, I mean, we want to support agricultural businesses. But we do want it to be safe. And I think the purpose of the ordinance is really about safety. I don't think it's about aesthetics, I think it's about safety. And to me, that's why I look at that question. So I'm not as concerned as perhaps I should be about every single step as looking at safety and looking at this gentleman's situation. I guess I would like to know from land use and how many vehicles we're talking about, but I don't know that we can know that very soon. It'll be a bit before we know that. Is that correct?
Application in front of me. What we'll do is we'll look at what I call employee traffic, customer traffic, and then operation traffic. So that is, you know, shipping, receiving, deliveries. And so employee traffic and customer traffic are typically going to be your standard automobiles. Delivery traffic is going to be larger trucks. We'll be looking at turning movements, you know, in and around the site for those. There's going to be some parking. Nothing that, you know, in our, again, this application came in last week, nothing in the initial review that shows that there would be not enough room. Is relatively large. There's enough room to maneuver in the, what I call the yard area for parking and you know, in and out, getting in and out. But yeah, that would get looked at by staff during our review and then put in a staff report and forwarded to the advisory commission.
And I have a question for Jess. Brad suggested that he move the other driveway so it meets the 550 feet? Is that what it is, 500 feet? But my question is does moving that driveway increase safety, decrease safety, or really have no impact on safety? So I understand it would meet the ordinance, but what's its impact on safety?
It would increase safety by spacing those out because you allow for proper braking and sight distances.
Proper braking from the other driveway?
Yes. Yep. Yep. When you look at the distance that it takes to stop a vehicle traveling 55 miles an hour, I mean, that's where these numbers come from. It's all based on stopping site distance and stopping distance for a vehicle. So I didn't see any issue with moving the driveway to the western limits of the parcel that's identified in the report. It's also spaced appropriately away from the bridge that was mentioned. There's a box culvert just to the west. It's a couple 100 feet from the property line. It's posing no sightline issues with traffic, so.
I'm going to ask Mr. Betcher another question. I understand you're frustrated, so that message is loud and clear. And other than being frustrated by being asked to move a driveway, which you don't think should have to be moved, what are the problems with that? There's some expense, I'm sure.
So there's some expense, plus it would take up more agricultural land. So we're going to end up moving it out into a field. So it's going to take away that additional acreage. For us, it's a drainage issue then too. So building the driveway down to that, we're going to have to put in another culvert on private property to be able to,
On your property?
yeah. So to allow the yard drainage to go down through there rather than having it run over the driveway. So that would be complications of that. So regarding the speed, so the offsets between driveways, I think it was not a line of sight issue, right? It's the speed. So I think it's challenging in 550 feet to leave one driveway and get up to 55 miles an hour before getting to the other driveway. So I'm not sure how the speed comes into play when you're talking about the distance between my two driveways. So if I have an employee leave one and another employee leave the other one at the same time, I don't see that being a concern.
I think that, the standards we're using were not developed by Goodhue County. Those are standards that are used by MnDOT, by counties all across the state. It's not a grab a number out of the air. They're documented, there's a method to how they come up with those numbers, so.
So does every new driveway issued meet the standards? And I think Mr. Greenwood will say that certain parcels, certain properties within the limits of their extents will have to be given a variance on that. So not every single driveway is built to that distance.
Might not have 550 feet on the road, or there might be driveways too close on either side. Right.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
That's why there's a variance process.
It's a recommendation, yes.
Well, no, it's the ordinance, and then if you don't meet the ordinance, then there's the variance process. Same as if you went to land use and you wanted to have a tier 3 with more than the number of square footage, you may be asked to then, if you want to continue to use more square footage, you might be asked to go get a variance to that to be able to use 8,000 square feet instead of 7,200 square feet. They're two different processes, and we don't just say no. We give an option on how you can get past no, and that's the variance process. So that's the way, and that's in state statute. So it's not us creating it. That's what state statute
But
gives.
again, within the process, there is a process, the variance process, where you can deviate from
Yeah,
the ordinance.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Did.
regarding the business, I understand that.
Well, hold it, just a second. You said I did?
Which is what Mr. Betcher did. He went through the variance process, got a variance approved, because obviously this ordinance is flawed. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Just because it works in other counties, it doesn't work here. So just as you identified, there's a variance process, you went through it, got
Yep.
approved, and then what?
Well.
Told
and then-
no.
Well,
Wait another 2 weeks. No.
okay, Jason. Here's the process. When you change the use of a property, which is what happens when you get a conditional use, then accesses get relooked at. We're going through a process to get a conditional use, which then is why Jess said, hold it, this is different than what we were asked in the beginning. That's why we're here.
So, can I talk theoretical for 1 minute? So, if our conditional use permit is approved, what impact does that have on the driveway? Jess, can you answer that? Our conversations in person when we were talking out at the site were that, well, if it's still going to be majority agriculture, which it is, it's going to have more ag traffic than it is for this business, that it probably wouldn't change but I'll let you speak for yourself.
Well, in terms of the location of the driveway, I mean, from the policy, it still doesn't meet the spacing requirement. If a variance is granted, we have to go through the process of ensuring that the driveway is built appropriately, like we talked about on site. The ideal thing would be to relook at the existing access that was serving your property initially, and having that moved further to the west, and having everything meet the conditions without having to have a driveway that's non-conforming to our policy.
But, so my question is regarding the driveway that was built, the new access, would there be any changes, or would it just still be built to county specifications?
It would be built to county specifications.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
That one. So to have the new ag business, he needs to have a permit, correct?
That's correct, yep.
All right, and that is now in the process, but it wasn't at the time, correct?
It was not at the time when the variance was reviewed by the board.
All right, so the variance was approved based on something different than where we are now, right?
I believe that's what you all are considering.
Well, I think if you read the application, talk about a business.
Right.
So if that's what you mean,
Yes.
the difference is
The decision was
in what the application should say today versus what the application said
that.
back then.
All right, so the normal process, if this is accurate, that you get permission from the township, and then it goes to the planning commission, and then the homeowner would work with land use and with public works to go to the next steps to make it a driveway accurate or whatever.
Correct.
Right. Well, I, for one, would like to see it go through all the different steps, and it sounds like now they're at least in process. But I do agree with Commissioner Anderson that when we do it after the fact, that it costs everybody the frustration of doing it, the staff cost of doing it. And if there really is an issue with our ordinances, then maybe it is time to look at it. So,
Okay. Go ahead.
May I ask Mr. Betcher a quick question? Is that all right?
Yeah?
So
We want all the information out. That's what we're looking for.
driveway spacings, and we've spoken about cross-sections of driveways and how they are to be built, and the spacings and everything else. And when I mention moving your existing home access driveway further to the west to your property line, I'm not referring to the ag parcel that's adjacent to you, rather your parcel that you live on. I don't think that actually impacts the ag ground
It
that
does.
much.
It does. Right where it would be is a hayfield right now.
Yep, and there's some trees right at that access point. I mean, would that be, I mean, to come into conformance and to have something that's amenable, I believe most things would work out through the Planning Advisory Commission, and, you know, when we're not going out and just denying permits perpetually just to deny permits. We're looking at alternatives to issues that come up, because we want to be able to help the people that are applying, and, you know, some of those alternatives were discussed. They weren't viable for you at the option, at that moment, and no further options were discussed before we went into the variance process. But, I mean, that would seem to me to be a reasonable accommodation that would suffice and serve everyone very well and could be easily addressed through that Planning Advisory Commission discussion. So,
I still feel that it's an excessive requirement to have to put in the second driveway when we have a variance process that can be reviewed, so.
I think the one thing that the county board always has to remember is once a access is put in, and the reason we want it built to our standards is because once it's in, granted, the landowner has to pay for it to get it in, it becomes Goodhue County property and we have to manage it forever. So if you don't put the right size culvert in, if you don't put the right kind of culvert in, if you don't have the right slope, it becomes our problem once it's done, when we accept it. So there is a reason why we dictate how we want it put in, because it perpetually becomes our problem from there forward. And when we talk about other people and what they've done, that doesn't mean that if something got done and wasn't properly gone through the process, that doesn't give anybody else the right to not follow the process. Somebody puts up a shed without a permit, that doesn't mean everybody gets to put up a shed without a permit. There's a process and everybody's supposed to follow it. I realize not everybody does, but we have a process and we need to follow it. And that's what we're charged with doing, is backing up staff to follow our ordinances that are adopted by our county board. Not maybe this one, but a past one. If we want to change it, then we should be bringing it back and have a very honest discussion about why we should not follow MnDOT specs as far as roads. And that is a discussion we could have, but it's not today's discussion. So is there any, Steve, is there any action we need to take? This needs to go through the Planning Commission. It is a change of use, and that will trigger looking at that driveway again, because it's not an ag use, not an agricultural specific use. It will be based on the use that gets approved through the Planning Commission. Is there any action we really need to take?
Just trying to think through that. As the issue stands now, the board has approved the variance, which would indicate that Jess and his group should be reviewing a permit application to issue a permit to build the driveway. Now, obviously the complication is that the driveway was put in without the permit, so that exists, and there are issues with it as Jess has pointed out. So the board, I think, has a couple options. I mean, if the board doesn't take any action today, the board's previous action still stands, and so that's going to put Highway in a difficult position about what to do with the permit application and that permitting process as to where the driveway is currently located. One of the options the board has is to make a motion to rescind the previous action of the board, which would then reverse the board's action approving the variance and basically start that process over as far as the board is concerned, for the board's consideration. So that would tell Jess, no, that you cannot issue a permit to correct the driveway, I guess, at this point, and the board will reconsider the issue at a later meeting once the remaining information is provided. So those are two options, I think.
So you're saying,
board has.
you're saying we could rescind it and then and then it goes through the process and comes back to us?
Correct.
Could possibly
So I
come
think
back
basically
to us.
would put the issue back to where it was before the board voted to approve the variance. So the application would be there. The board could ask the property owner to submit the additional information with regard to the permit, but you'll have that with regard to the variance request through land use, so that information hopefully would be sufficient for the board at that time to make a decision. I mean, because what I'm hearing the board say is that had that information been provided to the board initially, the variance may not have been granted. And so that's the issue, that the difficulty that the board is in, and was placed in, not at the board's fault, obviously, and whether or not that information was intentionally excluded or unintentionally excluded, it was information that was, pertinent to the consideration of whether or not to grant that variance. So I think the board would be justified in making a motion to rescind that authority at this point and instruct the landowner again to provide the additional information and go through the variance process.
Or move the driveway, or through the conditional use process, it may identify
It may
something.
resolve the issue entirely, correct?
What's the board's wishes?
And rescinding it doesn't mean he has to wait 6 months, is that right? It's not.
Well, I mean, obviously you're delaying it because.
Right, I understand that.
And the variance isn't going to be considered until probably a meeting in December, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the reality of the process at this point. So the work that he's done on the driveway now, that's an issue for him, obviously. And whether or not he'd be able to put a new driveway in later after the board finally approves this in December is another issue for the property owner. So those are all practical considerations, but
But the driveway isn't, and the culvert isn't up to standards anyway, is that correct?
yes.
So either way, it needs to be changed.
Correct, and that would be if the board decided to do nothing today and go forward with the variance approval, that would be something that Jess would have to work with the property owner to fix the construction defects in the driveway as it stands. I mean, that'll be part of the process there, and then obviously the board will have, considerations when the variance comes through for the business use.
And one last question. So let's say we didn't rescind it, but let him put the driveway in, okay? And with this review of the conditional use permit, as part of that, if the board chose, could they have him move the other driveway at that time? Or is that,
I might have to think about that more. Maybe you two would have some suggestions on that, but I think that would be one of the considerations, whether or not the variance was, or the conditional use was approved, could be conditioned on the driveway being moved. That's a reasonable condition that the board can consider as part of that process.
so,
But I'm sure the
so,
property owner doesn't want to go through the whole process of fixing his
No, no, I
driveway
understand that.
and getting it up to speed and then having to move it.
so one thing that perhaps could happen is we could approve fixing this driveway, the new driveway, getting it up to code, and the landowner would have to understand that as part of this conditional use process, we may or may not require him to move the other driveway. Is that correct?
That would be my understanding. Anybody want to weigh in on that or not?
Yes, that would be my understanding as well.
And I'm sure you're not happy with that, but it might be a better solution. It might be the best solution we have while the process is going forward.
I would leave that to the board to determine as part of that conditional use process.
Okay, you understand that you might be required to move the other driveway.
I would leave that to you guys to decide.
And if the board, if the board's wishes were to pursue it in that regard, it wouldn't require any action today because the board's already approved the variance. So it would just go through Jess and the permitting process to make sure that the driveway's built to code.
So you're saying we wouldn't have to rescind it, and part of the conditions on the conditional use could be that condition to move the other driveway?
Correct. If the board wanted to proceed as Commissioner Betcher had just indicated, which would be allowed to.
To me, that seems like a solution that's respectful to Mr. Betcher and respectful to our ordinance and to the Highway Department.
Okay. All right with that? All right. Thank you. John, did you want to say something?
So I'm Josh's neighbor. I couldn't have a better neighbor. This driveway, moving it down, to me, if you're coming from the west on this county road, it actually, what'd you say? It's another 100 feet, you've got to change it? It interrupts your line of sight because you're coming over a knoll from the west. To me, moving his lower driveway down makes it harder to see if somebody's pulling out of that driveway. And I drove truck for 45 years, so to stop 70,000 pounds, I'm a little sensitive to that. And I go down that road quite a bit. I think it actually messes up your line of sight. Did you look into that when you were there, or
Yep, when we looked at it, line of sight was not an issue.
you don't think that knoll creates a problem?
We didn't notice anything out of the ordinary that we wouldn't have permitted elsewhere in a similar situation.
So as you go to, if we go to the route and you're gonna permit a driveway farther west, you'll take all that into consideration in how you'll follow the ordinance, how you cite it, so, yeah.
I guess from living out in the country like I do, I guess I'm coming at it from Josh's standpoint. I don't see moving that driveway 120 feet's gonna, I think it's a waste of time and money.
You don't think it would improve safety?
No.
In fact, you're concerned it might decrease safety.
Yes, and if somebody's pulling out of one driveway and the other driveway, the only concern I would have is maybe a truck is pulling out and you're turning, you can't see them, but there's enough room for that too. And in that spot in the road, nobody's moving that fast anyway. So that's my
Okay.
thoughts. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Did you say your last name for the record or not?
All right. We'll let this go through the process, come back at some point through Planning Commission. Thank you. All right, you have some reports there. Lucas, are you going to go through the third quarter finance report, or were we just, you want us to just read that?
I wasn't really planning on going through it, but I guess if there's any questions, I can certainly.
Anybody have any questions on that? Looks good. Project status, new and old business.
Just a comment. Based on this, I'm going to ask for this ordinance to come back, that we reevaluate the driveway ordinance and go through the planning commission. And to just ask my fellow commissioners, as you take a step, drive out in the country someday, and just look at what you're looking from the safety standpoint about how they're saying moving these driveways closer, farther apart. The driveways, it's not rational. It's not realistic, the ordinance as it exists. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and that's what we're trying to group in there. So I will get that on the agenda probably for next meeting to get this revisited, the ordinance. So.
Okay. Committee reports.
Thank you.
Linda.
All right, the Red Wing Housing Summit is going to be Wednesday, October 29th at the St. James Hotel from 2 to 6. The Southeast Minnesota Coalition Housing Study is now currently gathering information from all the cities and counties, and it should be updated and available probably mid-2026. And there's one other thing that came down from Association of Minnesota Counties. This had to do with something the sheriff had brought up about how long somebody with a mental health diagnosis and needs hospitalization, that there is a 48-hour rule that within 48 hours they have to be moved to a facility. I did check into that. The 48-hour rule is apparently after a bed is found, and there are very few beds in Minnesota. However, that rule has now been suspended for the next 2 years because of the fact that there aren't enough beds to handle the people that need it. So-
I think hospitals had an issue with that too, because sometimes they had someone who they felt more acutely needed the bed who wasn't in any kind of controlled setting, and so they didn't feel it was right to not be able to have some impact on that decision.
Yes. the really, the really
Hospitals who've had juveniles
desperate.
in their buildings for a long time.
So the Department of Corrections is committed to having 50 more beds by 2029, but now you're talking about 4 years from now, and pretty much everyone says 50 beds is not even going to be close to meet the needs.
It'll be full the first day, and there'll be 50 more waiting.
However, that 48-hour rule is suspended for the next 2 years.
I was just going to give an update on the LEC meeting. The county and the city of Red Wing got together, and they were presented 3 options that might work. The options, though, all involved building, okay? And the cheapest option, and this was just for the building, it wasn't for the site prep, and I can't remember the other word, was $8 million. And if there was a parking garage, it was 17 or $18 million. So the question will really end up being, does the city really want to have a big investment in a building that the county owns? And does the county really want to spend a lot of money on building out space for the city? So that's what I think it'll come down to. I don't know, Todd, if you want to add anything?
No, you're kind of explained it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, any other reports? I have one. Go ahead.
Scott and I have met with City of Pine Island and Ryan Companies, and also Lucas and I met the other day. There is, if anybody wants to look at what's they're at right now in the City of Pine Island, on their website has an alternative urban area review. It's called an AUAR. So if you want to kind of look and see what is kind of happening there in Pine Island, it's a monster project, and there's a lot more information to come. So.
I think the one in Cannon Falls just went through that there, but it's not, it'll be in the city of Cannon Falls, but it'll be actually in Dakota County. They're looking at that same stuff. You have something more to say, Sue?
So I just wondered if, Todd, if you thought it was pretty likely to go through?
Sure appears that way.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Hearing none. Claims.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moving second, we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We are going to go back to our budget meeting across the hall for a few minutes, and then come back in here for our Health and Human Services at 10.